March 23rd, she posts again. Because of the media craziness, the Posse is largely asking to have their names kept quiet. That said, someone want me to point out the following. The majority of the Posse is female. One half is autistic. Additionally, half of the people live with a physical disability. It didn't keep a single one of them from doing what was needed regarding a predator. They've worked so hard, overcome so many obstacles. They really are my heroes. March 24th, she has another post about her mother, some posts about autism that I don't really feel are relevant. She has a post about becoming a rabbi. March 24th, she posts, my name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer, John Trefil, MD. She's added the MD to him now. For a long time, John would only acknowledge killing men. They typically fell into two categories: immobilized hospital patients that were overdosed via injection and men who were struck from behind, usually with a metal pipe. The vast majority of these cases took place in the 1960s, Chicago, Illinois. So I live in Chicago area and I have never heard of a series of unidentified pipe murders, but I will look into that. The first woman that John admitted to killing was far from the first he'd killed. He gave no details what he did to her, but this is the information he did give. A number of John's killings over the years took place in Westport, California. As a little girl, I remember him going up to Westport frequently, despite of how incredibly tiny it was. When things between he and my mother got too tense, which happened a lot, he'd put his camper on the back of his truck, drive either far north or far south, and be gone for a week or so. He'd come back, tensions eased, and not talk about what he'd done during the vacation. The first time that he talked about murdering a woman was incidentally also the first time that he talked about killing more than one person at a time. In this conversation, he mentioned that he had killed other couples several times, including a Westport. When John would go into the woods to commit premeditated murder, he said he would often bring a baseball cap and an extra t-shirt. It's good to be prepared. The change of shirt was to ensure that any possible witness could be thrown off if they described him to the police. The baseball cap could change per crime. In Albion for years, he had a collection of baseball caps on display in the living room that I'd never seen him actually wear. This event took place in the early mid-70s. On this occasion, John went into the woods with a change of shirt and a baseball cap. John never named these two victims. As always, I created names for them as a reminder that they were human beings, not merely a reflection of what John did to them. Maybe someday they will be found and they will be able to reclaim their actual identities. Until then, I refer to them as Topher and Bernadette. John was looking for campers that were camping off of the trail in the woods, targeting poor people, hippies in particular, that were trying to save money by not being at an actual campground, was something that he said he did on a number of occasions. He did not say how he found his makeshift campsite, whether or not he stalked the couple in advance. He approached Topher and Bernadette's campsite and began chatting with them. When asked in 2015, John thought that they may have come from Berkeley, but it was so long ago that he couldn't remember for certain. Memory is a very important aspect of a lot of this. Bernadette, he said, was automatically uncomfortable with his presence. He described her as probably blonde. Okay, seems not very concrete. John focused on Topher. He lured Topher away from the campsite by telling him that there was a rare animal at a distance from there. As Topher was not local, spotting the creature would be a particular visual treat. The young man followed John about the length of a football field. How would he know how long? Like these kind of details are just what makes this story so difficult for me. The length of a football field. Topher was not a local, so seeing some creature would be a visual treat. They stopped. John pointed in a direction for Topher to look. When Topher's attention was where John pointed, John bludgeoned him to death in the back of the head. And so he was carrying this metal pipe the entire time. John never said how Bernadette was killed. His focus on the story seemed to be the ruse that he created in order to trick Topher away. Up until this point, this had been an aspect of killing males that he really liked to focus on, the trick, the con. Men didn't anticipate being predated on, particularly not young, fit, strong men. John would not elaborate, but he was extremely confident that these two bodies would not ever be found. There were times when John went to extreme lengths to dispose of a body, relying on his medical school training. This was one of them. John was clear that the bodies did not make it out of the woods. I'm not particularly well-versed in the geography of the Westport area. Mostly, I've just seen the majestic, terrifying cliffs for which it is known. I do not even know how much woods there are up there. John never gave a number for how many couples he killed, either of outside or inside of Mendocino County. And so she's included some photographs of John, and he's got a nice mustache and some stylish outfits. March 27th, she has a post where she discusses being abused as a child, not by her father, and having epilepsy. March 27th, she posts, "My name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer. The person that I now bring to the public's attention very well could still be alive. I don't know. That's missing persons cases in a nutshell. All I know for sure is that for as far back as I can remember, my mother has said that the last time she laid eyes on her ex-husband, William Monk Montgomery, was in Albion, California, circa 1982. He came to Albion specifically because he wanted to visit his minor children who were living with John and Candy. John pulled a shotgun on Monk, and according to both my parents, at that point Monk left. In my father's diaries, he referred to Monk as the Toad. Maruska, a Czech nickname for Maria, is a reference to me. I'll have to deal with the Toad at least 12 more years. I've not felt this angry for a long time. I will not allow this Toad to disrupt my life in peace and tranquility because he has a sudden whim to do so. It will be put to the test. He will never see Candy or Maruska or others or communicate with them in any way. If her kids fuck up, I'll whip them till they bleed. Monk disappeared sometime around this time, but the actual date is unknown. I do not believe that he was reported missing, though I did alert police to his name on more than one occasion. If they found him alive, I've yet to hear about it. At the time that he fell off the radar, Monk was living in Covella, California. John particularly hated Monk. There were a number of times that he tried to gain Candy back from 1965 to 1980. In his diaries, she flung it in John's face on these occasions that Monk was far superior to him at physical intimacy. John was hit particularly hard by this barb. On account of Monk, John believed Candy abandoned him for 14 and a half years. There was no question that he wanted revenge. Only how far he went was the question. And there appears to be a picture of this man and some more of these writings talking about the Toad. There's a post on March 28th where she discussed him having sexual relations with patients, assaying patients, really. On March 28th, she writes, "The Zodiac film has been brought up multiple times. What I have to say about it is, yes, I watched that film with my parents. No, there was no kind of reaction from either of them throughout the movie that would be off or suspicious. None at all." So she watched the movie Zodiac with her father, who was supposedly the Zodiac killer, and he didn't act suspicious. The thing that I look back on that strikes me as a red flag was that at no point did either of them mention then or in any of the following years that they knew two of the people portrayed in the film, Melvin Belli and Herb Cain. They also had not mentioned to me that my grandmother lived in Riverside, California in the early 1960s and that she worked at various hospitals. The assumed Zodiac victim, Cherry Jo Bates, from Riverside was, like John, Czech American. She was also a nursing student. What John later had to say about the film was that he never stalked Robert Graysmith, that this was entirely made up by him or Hollywood. John did, in retrospect, wish that he had stalked him, though, as portrayed in the film. He chuckled about it. So I guess this must have been after. Reminder, I believe my father was probably the Zodiac for reasons I have still not published, but have spoken to police about. Still, I'm not the one saying it for certain. He said it. The reason that John acknowledged himself as Zodiac is beyond bizarre. He found out that Zodiac socks and paraphernalia are available on Etsy. That made him incredibly angry and frustrated, especially that the cipher is being replicated by amateur artists, that they are making money off of what he says he worked very hard to create. He felt cheated. In specifics, he saw an Etsy pair of socks with the cipher, for which he complained that he received zero royalties, and that broke him. To those that don't know John personally, that sounds insane. Yes, it sounds insane. To those that do know him, I figure quite a few people will feel that there's something about this that's spot on. John is a major skinflint. Money is a huge focus of his life, always has been. The concept of being financially cheated is huge at the forefront of his mind, perhaps because he's stolen from so many. So to whoever who makes Zodiac socks on Etsy, yep, you broke him. He was furthermore very angry that another serial killer action figure, Gacy, was more expensive than the Zodiac action figure. So he's supposedly jealous of John Gacy. The people that want logic and rationality in this case, the people that judge John's actions and thoughts by what regular people would do if they were in his shoes, you have to step outside the box for this one. John's belief system is different from the twaddle that Manson believed, but both of them, while sane, are just frankly off their rocker. Could John be lying about being Zodiac? Absolutely. I don't think that he is. He absolutely could be lying, though. I'm just reporting what he said. Someone asks for John's autograph, and she replied to him. She references a video where John talks about Bundy and Gacy. There's a claim that he's unintelligible, too fragile to speak to law enforcement. I will grant at 86, he's got some health problems. He has a tremor. He's bedridden. He has had almost all of his teeth removed, so understanding him takes a little practice. This is a video shot on December 22nd, 2024. I can only ask, is this man really too fragile to be interviewed? Really? Because I did it. It can still be done.
So what was your opinion on Ted Bundy's last confession?
It was a bunch of bullshit.
You want to elaborate on that?
Well, he felt that He said that pornography was the cause of rape. And I think the person who's going to commit rape has got a long history of antisocial behavior. Guilty was guilty as the state is strong.
So you don't think pornography made Bundy do what he did?
Absolutely not. There's all kind of pornography that's going around and those people aren't really affected by it. Like you have to with the Playboy magazine. That doesn't cause any debate, but when we have a certain kind of childhood, and I'm not sure what kind of childhood that is, but the guy's gonna have a good relationship with his mother, I'm sure. And then he's acting it out on innocent women.
So you think Bundy was just a straight-up con artist?
Yeah. He surprised people like going as far as they did in his education. I think he's done a year or two in law school.
What about Gacy? What was your opinion on Gacy?
What's it he do?
John Wayne Gacy, remember he had the 33 boys underneath his house in the crawl space?
Oh yeah, that was in Chicago.
Yep.
Well, I think we boil it down to the smallest of the denominator. I think people who have a very bad childhood from a very, very early age, possibly in the first or second year of life, they don't establish a sense of trust in other people. They believe other people are basically very good and have kindly feelings toward them.
On March 30th, there is a post where she says, John Trefil mentioned victims from multiple racial and ethnic backgrounds, white, Asian, black, indigenous. None of them were selected on account of race. Random victims of opportunity was the phrase that one Posse member used, and I wholeheartedly believe that is generally accurate. There is, however, one ethnic group that John sought out for murder or preferred to kill whenever they were available. That is Slavic Americans and Slavic immigrants, as Slavs as a whole are virtually unacknowledged and unseen in the United States. March 30th, she would write, my name is Galina. I am the daughter of a serial killer, John Trefil. Of the 9 women and girls John disposed of at one location in Comptche, California, there is only one whose backstory he has been willing to speak out about. Perhaps because she was not a hitchhiker or a stranger. He kept a keepsake of hers, and when I asked him about it, this prompted him to tell the story. John was extremely fascinated by Eastern medicine, studied it for decades. He had strong ties to the San Francisco Chinese community. He briefly even took Mandarin classes. When living probably on La Playa Street near Ocean Beach, John attained a father figure in his next-door neighbor, Zhu Sun Lu. This bond was so strong that Zhu Song, nicknamed JS, called John his son, and I was raised to acknowledge Zhu Song as my grandfather. Zhu Song would occasionally take in Chinese immigrants as boarders in his home. At one point, John became engaged to one of them. It was his intention that they get married in San Francisco church that John was attending, whose parishioners were, I believe, prominently Chinese and Chinese American. John's engagement was broken off. I don't know why. His former fiancée is still alive. Perhaps she will come forward. Regardless, after their breakup, John remained obsessed with the idea of marrying another Eastern Asian woman and was involved in mail-order bride correspondence all throughout the 1980s. At some point, Zhu Song took in another boarder, an immigrant from Hong Kong. John will not say her actual name. I call her Meng Yao Do. The name is a reflection of the keepsake that John kept after taking her from San Francisco to Comptche. He has given the precise burial locations of multiple victims at Comptche. He has not said which grave belongs to Meng Yao or how she died after he brought her there. And then there's a photograph of him with Jung Sung. On March 31st, she has another post about Valkyrie Do, which we discussed in the previous video. She would say, in 1993-94, this was around the time John diagnosed himself with Parkinson's and began telling everyone that would listen how physically fragile he was, that he wouldn't last more than 2 or 3 years, and how intense his mental decline would be before he died. As a child, I didn't believe that he was lying about Parkinson's. I did see that he was lying about the severity of his symptoms, though, and I would go on to tell my mother this for the next 2 decades. She told him, upon his diagnosis, that she would be his slave. This was the word that she often referred to herself as in this regard. In her presence, as time progressed, John began as helpless and weak as a kitten. John was definitely pulling a hoax in order to use Candy as his personal servant. In 2015, Reno Hospice and their associate physicians informed me that, in their professional opinion, John did not have Parkinson's or dementia that my mother still wholeheartedly believed that he does. It must be noted that for both Parkinson's and dementia, there is no physical test that can prove that John's self-diagnosis is accurate. The diagnosis is based on the symptoms that he presents to the world, and given that John specifically studied neurology, he knew exactly what to present as if he were faking. It is my opinion that John does have some kind of actual neurological problem, but it is decidedly not Parkinson's. Sort of impossible to speculate on whether or not he has Parkinson's or not, right? March 31st, she writes, good news. Over the past 2 weeks, multiple women have reached out to tell me that John attempted to abduct them during the 1990s. They recognize his photo. Bad news. Over the last 2 weeks, multiple women have reached out to tell me that John attempted to abduct them during the 1990s. They recognize his photo. And again, it's impossible to know whether these people are just internet trolls or not at this point. April 1st, she writes, yes, my father discussed mutilation and decapitation, particularly in reference to his victims in San Francisco, a lot. The details are grisly. I won't be sharing them publicly here, other than to say that he admits to repeatedly doing it. The sparse references to it in the diary are as follows. So there's a lot of other boys who are pretty upset with old George. I'd prefer to cut his head off with a pocket knife than to use a 30-06 scope. No one would ever find the head. On the second page here attached, there's a conversation going on between my parents regarding Candy's second husband, William Montgomery, who had been missing person for roughly 40 years. I think you're just worried I'll bring Monk's head back in a plastic bag tomorrow. Again, these just sort of seem like statements like, I'd prefer to cut his head off doesn't mean that he cut someone's head off. And then there are some diary entries relating to CPS investigation. On April 4th, she writes, as far back as I can remember, my parents talked about in hushed tones a major catastrophe taking place which forced John Trefil to move from early 1980s Lake County to Mendocino County. Lake County, California, I can't stress enough, is incredibly rural. The Lake County jail where my father worked had a very small inmate population, and that is why it stood out that in under a year, no less than 3 inmates at the jail unalive themselves. I put this in quotation marks because my father admitted to the murder of one of those inmates, 22-year-old Judith Ann Judy Moser. I reached out to Lake County specifically about this case and was told that there was no record of Judith Moser. Okay. I responded that, well, there had to be records because she died there in custody. Further, because she died while in custody, her family successfully sued Lake County for her death. Oh, the pathetic and twisted irony when her family brought a lawsuit. John did his best to endear himself to Judy's family. I think that he might have even testified or volunteered to testify for them against the other staff. John refused to say how he brought about Judith's deaths, whether she was over-medicated, under-medicated, or did something to her, which prompted her to unalive herself. I have no idea how he did it, but it seems that Lake County should definitely still have gobs of information about this murder. After those 3 Lake County unalivings, John never worked inside a correctional facility again. And then there's a news article about the unalivings. April 5th, she has another post about Julia Strand, who we discussed in one of the kind of rehashing Julia Strand's attempt to take her life. April 6th, she has a post looking into starting a GoFundMe. Mendocino County needs GPR equipment, cadaver dogs, and water dogs. There is no quit. Now, I don't think we should be GoFunding the government, personally. On April 8th, she has a post about her great-grandparents. She says, whenever I think of my role in all this, I prefer to say I am the G-granddaughter of murder victims. That is truly how I see my place in all of this. I want justice for my family. I want to know that the souls of my G-grandparents can rest. And she goes into sort of their history. Her great-grandmother, Jenny, was killed on July 5th, 1963 at the age of 87. John, who was then a mental patient at the Illinois State Psychiatric Institute, discovered during a therapy session that Jenny had tortured him. The torture descriptions were quite graphic, yet John never was, even decades later, able to actually remember whether torture had actually happened or was complete fantasy. John will never stand trial for murdering his grandparents over 60 years ago. After this long, there is no evidence that could possibly convict him for what he did. He got away with it. He's smug and chuckling about that because he knows that. Keep in mind, this is the version of events that John actually admits to. His diaries had one more clue about the treatment of his grandparents, though. It could be fantasy, it could be a memory. So she even acknowledges it. And the diary reads, JM responds by slamming and bolting the door. I say to S, let me kick it in, which I proceed to do. We're inside. CM comes up. I say to him, go to your room and I'll waste you. He looks confused and paralyzed. I punch him in the face and push him into the room and lock it. Tell him if he makes any noise, I'll bind and gag him. I do likewise with the rest, but I may want to watch and or hear. JM, who do you think you are? S, is that the best you can come up with? S, get down on your knees and beg John's forgiveness. JM looks frightened and hesitates. J to S tells her she's got 3 seconds and I'll begin whipping and burning her and cutting her. JM paralyzed. JS, we bind her. J, I put a cigarette out on her forehead and say, speak up, old lady. Cat got your tongue? You always had so much to say before. Again, doesn't really seem to me to be a confession here. Or anything, really. April 9th, she writes, my name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer. These posts are starting to get less long and less in-depth, which means, you can take that for what it means. My name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer. The following is awful. Trigger warning. There's a great deal of evidence that John discussed getting rid of. His collection of female victims' clothing, vehicles belonging to the victims. I'm going to say again, but there's one piece of evidence that's not going anywhere, not without a wrecking ball. His subterranean tomb, as he called it, located in Albion, California. One of the victims was kept there, he said, for 3 weeks solid. She was assigned a name of his choice. She is buried on the Albion property. John claimed that throughout the property, he buried boxes of evidence, including Polaroids taken of victims, while they were still alive. His treatment of victims, he claimed, was good. His diary suggests otherwise. Who can I let a murderous rage out while high on grass and in restraints? That rage has been there every second, minute, hour of my 13,343 days, just as alive, intense, real, lusty, to explode out, kept even by stronger defenses. I would chain them all up in a dungeon so they couldn't move naked, tape over their mouths so they couldn't talk back. Any movement, lack of attention, eyes closed or off me, I'd whip them, cut them, burn them, electrify them into attention. Feed them nothing but moldy bread and LSD water, in dark, except when I'm talking to them. You're all going to die slowly and be tortured for a week until you die. To John's defenders, the ones saying he's a poor old man in his hospital bed, I ask you, have you ever written something like this? It's certainly in depth, but there's no indication about whether it's true or not. There's another letter from Galina to her mother. There seems to be a lot of mother discussion. April 10th, she writes, my mother has blocked me on Facebook. April 10th, she also writes, I'm not sure whether I should discuss a situation like this publicly or not. It's one of those scenarios that either way, it's just a lose-lose because you can never know what will set someone off. I just found out that a neighbor has essentially been spying on me, probably for money and at the behest of a third party. This is so deeply sickening, frightening, and pathological. I've known that there was an issue with this neighbor for a while now, but I've never thought it would be this bad. So to that neighbor, I'm saying now, don't tape me, don't tape my kids, don't tape my friends that come to visit me. It's an irony about people thinking that I went public about my father being a serial killer for attention. I knew something like this was going to happen. Of course it would. Duh. Still knowing that was waiting for me and my family does not make it easier. So now she's claiming people are watching her. April 10th, she states, well, I was just doxxed. I only talk about these more personal posts just so you can sort of understand her mindset of where she's going. So I'm trying to avoid a lot of the discussion about the personal details that she has because they're really not relevant. April 12th, my name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer, John Trefil. I don't read or study the Zodiac case. I watched a few documentaries because of the obligation to, not the desire. There was a particular thing in a documentary that popped out to me. If John is the Zodiac, I understand right away, though other people looking at the case absolutely would not understand it. The Monticello card, which was mailed into police, has been used as proof that the Zodiac was lying about what he did, taking credit for other killers' murders. There was a horrific double homicide in California near Monticello Street, verifiably perpetrated by someone else. Police and the public believe the Monticello card was referencing it. No, when I saw the card, I knew that this was not at all what John would have been saying. The card would have absolutely not have been a reference to anywhere in California. John loved to visit Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson in Virginia. It was a real touchstone for him. He collected seeds, acorns, I think, from trees planted by Jefferson and tried to make them grow on our property in Albion. He took me to Monticello a few times when he visited Virginia when I was a little girl. Most of John's and my photographs from the 1980s were destroyed, but this photo of me at Monticello did survive. So if John is Zodiac, In the Woods Dies April is a Virginia victim, not a California one. April 14th, another post. My name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer, John Trefil. I know that there would be women who would be sympathetic towards my father. Ted Bundy received thousands upon thousands of love letters, so yeah, I saw this coming. Still, it's hard for me to process. To John's fangirls, here's a few more diary snippets. And then there's some diary entries that talk about dominating and essaying women. Vaguely talk about them. They're not specific. There's no specific details. April 16th, she posts some articles about John Trefil opening a practice. April 18th, she writes, "My name is Galina. I'm the daughter of a serial killer, John Trefil. Sometimes when I look at my father's diary entries, I can't help but think what a field day those who investigated Bundy or Gacy would have if they'd found similar writings in their possession. John worked with law enforcement. He knew exactly what he could say, how he could phrase things, and still have it labeled as circumstantial. Still, one has to admit there's a lot of circumstantial here. Side note, John started typing his diaries in mid-1990s. Almost all handwritten diary entries predate that period. Problem with the typewritten diaries is they're very hard to validate. Right? My dark, evil, cruel, sadistic side, it's part of me. It is me, the killer, the monster, the raging lunatic in my lifelong nightmare. I must embrace it. Intricate. I need its power." 10/19/77. Censored Doug, a sadistic, violent professional killer who is now out to kill her. It finally went over the line with S calling the sheriff on my saying I'm a psychopathic killer who wants to kill her. Serial killer, seductive mothers, kid was ultimately special and abused, arrow symbol leads to sexual murder, childhood's almost identical to mine. Dream, I'm a serial SAer killer. I summon a 16 to 17-year-old girl. I tell her run for your life. I see her fear, her naivete. I say I can't do this anymore. Dream, I'm a serial killer of women. Association, I have a lot of anger towards women. Sexual, learn to just go to whores with an attitude of really don't care if I get a hard on or have an orgasm. Just to go will give me a great self-esteem because it's overcoming my fear. Abstinence brings out the killer instinct in my. I can't afford to ever let that happen again. So we covered a lot of ground in this video, and we still have not seen a lot of evidence of anything. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Please like and share this video. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky. My username is The Spooky Lawyer. Follow me on TikTok. My username is AKBruise. If there is a different disturbing story you'd like me to cover, leave me a comment or send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super thanks button. Please click it and make a donation. Any donation you make to this channel will go back into making good videos for this channel. I appreciate it. You also support me by liking, sharing, and watching my videos. And I really do appreciate that you watch my videos. And please stay spooky.